All right, here we go. Vocab. Week 4, period. I don't know. I just do these things to amuse myself, I guess. Students, this is Mr. Bowman. This is his vocab. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's do this. So, apathetic. To be described as apathetic is an adjective. It's an adjective, that's why you describe someone that way. Someone who's described as apathetic doesn't care about anything, or at least not this particular thing in the moment. They put forth zero effort. They might put forth a little just so they can say they did it, but that's about it. It's actually a pretty strong insult. If you call someone apathetic, to be described as someone who doesn't care and doesn't follow through is a pretty rough thing to say about someone. The noun form of it is apathy. If you have apathy, particularly if you have apathy toward a particular thing, that'd mean like, I just don't care about that thing. All right, so you can see in the corner here, it says, Troop, what's with you? Is it ignorance or apathy? The guy says, Sarge, I don't know, and I don't care. Which I kind of like that one. That's pretty good. All right, cartographer. These are good words this week. They are a challenge, but there aren't many that are similar to one another. Is that true? Maybe that's true. Let's see. At least not in a Latin sense. Meaning-wise, there certainly is. A cartographer, this is a noun. It's someone's job. A cartographer is someone whose job is to make maps, to make and to design maps. They design them. They have to figure out how to make something really enormous and wildly complicated into something compressed and flat and small and somehow still accurate. Now, the art or the field or the science of map making is called cartography. It's worth thinking about map making. It's a really important thing. We've talked about the upside down world map in my room, but really if you look at different map styles, we tend to think of the map that we see in classrooms as automatically it. That's a style map called the Mercator projection. There's lots of different ways to do it. The Mercator projection is nice because it makes it real flat, but it's incredibly inaccurate. If you look at distances on it, it doesn't really make any sense. Anyway, a conformist. A conformist is a noun. It's a noun form of the verb to conform. To conform is to take the shape of whatever's around you. Now, if you're talking about a person who's conforming, that means they do what everyone else around them is doing, and they follow all those expectations. So a conformist, then, is someone who strictly follows expectations and patterns of behavior. The verb form, again, is conform. But here's the thing. You almost never hear someone call someone else a conformist. They might, but not very often. Usually you'll hear them say nonconformist. This is used to label someone who's rebellious and refuses to do things like everyone else. Now, this can be a good thing if what everyone else is doing is bad. A nonconformist is doing the good thing. And it has a little bit of a kind of cool thing to it, being the rebel. This was particularly true in the 50s and 60s with the rise of greaser culture in the 50s and the rise of hippie culture in the 60s. And then even in the 70s with the punk rock scene. It kind of went away, this idea of being the nonconformist. It kind of came back, I guess, in the mid-90s with the grunge movement, but that really, it's kind of gone away now. This picture down here in the corner, that's Marlon Brando in his first real film role. It's a movie called The Wild Ones. He's the leader of a motorcycle gang. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. His motorcycle gang is called the Beatles, and it's part of why the Beatles are called the Beatles. The band, are called the Beatles. They're named after that. In that movie, he has this awesome line. This woman in town, this young woman who he's ends up involved with, she says, so what are you rebelling against? She's kind of snide and snarky about it, but she's right. Like she's not wrong. And he has the best response ever. He says, well, what do you got? Like whatever you have and believe in, I'm against it. It's a badass line. He's a real badass. Although he's also, frankly, kind of a jerk. All right, existential. Existential is an adjective. It describes a thought or a thing, usually a work of art, that is itself concerned with the very nature and truth of existence, the nature of being. Now, you look at the word and you go, well, existential existence, that makes sense. It's true. That's how you should remember it, but it goes deeper than that. If you have an existential crisis or you have existential anxiety, that implies a soul-level wondering about what it all means and what your place is in all of it. To have a true existential crisis is an unbelievably painful thing. What is the point of me? Why do I exist? Why am I here? What's the point of it? Often, if you have an existential crisis, you are in a bad way. People find themselves in some very unpleasant feelings and ideas. But often when you're in that existential crisis, you will find yourself coming out of it with a great deal more faith. a great deal more feeling of where you belong and what you have to do. It can lead to really wonderful stuff. Existentialism is an entire school of philosophy. There's a whole mode of literature named after this, but we'll get into that some other time. Nefarious. It's an adjective. Oh my gosh, I just subconsciously did the same thing that he's doing with his hands. Now I wonder. It's an adjective. It's something that's described as nefarious. It's an action or a person or an activity that is wicked, immoral, or sneaky. It's bad, has ugly motives. If he is doing something nefarious, he's almost certainly doing something terrible for everyone else around him and only good for him. Bad guys are nefarious. Vilify. Now, nefarious and vilify are similar words in a way. If nefarious means to do bad things, to vilify, it's a verb, is to make someone sound bad. It's to damage their reputation. So again, as it says here, to vilify someone could be something, but is pretty much always a person, to be honest. Like it could be a corporation, I guess, but it has to be something that has a certain amount of free will. It's to speak of them in such a way that is damaging to their reputation. You can think about it as trying to make that person seem like a villain. That would make sense. It is usually seen as a cheap shot and as an unfair thing to do. If you try to vilify someone, you're kind of implying that they shouldn't be thought of this badly, but you're doing it anyway. All right, vindicate. Vindicate's a verb. So it sounds a little bit like vilify, but don't get it mixed up. All right, they both have VI and they're both verbs, but they're very different words. To vindicate someone or something is to take it and to rescue its reputation and prove that it's actually good. If you vindicate something, everyone thought it was bad, and then you prove it's great. In order for something to be vindicated, it must first have been attacked as bad or not worthwhile. Someone can feel vindicated when someone else proves that they were right about something, when everyone else thought that they were wrong. If you said, Mr. Bowman, group presentations are a bad idea, and then you brought me this huge, trove of documentation from education theorists that all agreed, this is a terrible idea, kids should never do this. I went, oh my God, you're right, I'll never do this again. Then you would be vindicated, right? That's not going to happen. Group presentations are good for you, and they're going to happen. All right, here we go. A zealot. A zealot is a noun. It's someone who is absolutely blindly devoted to a particular belief system. It isn't necessarily religious. It's often used for religion, but not all the time. Now, this is usually used in a religious context, but it can be about someone who is really devoted to Apple products. They're a zealot for Apple products. They won't own anything else. If it's Apple, they have to have it. They can be a zealot about a football team. They can be a zealot about a lot of things. Now, keep in mind, though, to call someone a zealot is not a good thing. It means that they have a blind level of devotion where they don't think things through, and they might even do dangerous things as a result. This isn't just being like a fan of a baseball team. This is being the guy who's a fan of the baseball team and is fighting people in the parking lot who are wearing a different shirt than he is. This is not a good thing. Zealots will ignore any thought or reasoning that doesn't align with their previously held notions and will act in a way that is harmful as a result. Now, there's other forms of this. The noun form of it would be zealotry. All right? That'd be a big one. There's a word zealous. If you act zealous, that is an adjective describing this very action. Okay? All right, here we go. Transcendent. It's an adjective. Something that is transcendent is an experience or it's an idea that takes one far beyond the normal bounds of an experience. It's transformative. A transcendent experience makes you reconsider all your prior experiences and all your future ones. You think oh my God, everything I've known is a lie. This changes everything, and now my whole life needs to change. It redefines whatever it was. Now, you can have a transcendent relationship. You can have a transcendent piece of art, transcendent moment in class. Have an English teacher who defines how you thought English class could work. There's all kinds of ways to do this. Now, to say a meal is transcendent, it wouldn't mean it necessarily changes your whole life, but maybe it changes how you see food. There was this picture in the corner here is from a kind of briefly lived food movement called molecular gastronomy that we'll have to talk about in class sometime. It's pretty neat. It's kind of out of fashion now, but I still think it's pretty neat. A simpleton. Lots of people think I'm a simpleton. It's a noun. A simpleton is not a very nice thing to call someone. It labels them as simple. But not simple as in uncomplicated, he likes gardening and that's all he likes to do. No, simple as in not smart. Very not smart. It can also be used to label someone foolish or gullible. Oh, that's simpleton. Ugh. It's not a nice thing to say. Don't call me that. At least not to my face, all right? Spare my feelings. That's it. That's all the words this week. There's a lot of them. Well, 10, but they're tougher than in previous weeks. You really want to make sure you study them up. In order to help you, I've put a word wall in the room so you can kind of see them with very short definitions. That'll be a little bit helpful, but that word wall will be coming down before the quiz, just so you know. You only have a couple days with that thing up in the room. All right, goodbye, good luck, see you then.